Everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. Really bummed out that we're not going to go back to school. I'm not going to get to see you again before the end of this year, but glad I get to see you all next year. I miss you, and I hope, like I said, everything's going well. Please reach out if it's not. All right, the next section we're going to be doing is called quadratics, and I cannot emphasize enough that this is by far the most important chapter of Algebra 2. We're going to be spending a lot of weeks on it. We're going to learn to graph. We're going to learn to find solutions. We're going to learn to find answers. We're going to be able to do everything with a quadratic. Funny part about quadratic, if you look over here, this is a quadratic equation. And even though quad normally stands for 4, a quadratic equation has x squared in it. What's the big difference between algebra 1 and algebra 2? In algebra 1, excuse me, in algebra 1, we did linear lines, y equals mx plus b. And this was exactly what it looked like. You could have negative and our slope would change down. But this was algebra 1, graphing linear lines, y equals mx plus b. In algebra 2, we're going to take a quadratic equation. If I zoom out, you'll see the bottom of it. We're going to take a quadratic equation that has an x squared in it, and we're going to graph it. When you graph it, it becomes a hyperbola, okay, a shape like this. And of course, that shape can go upside down as well, okay? So it can go up, it can go down. And with the quadratic, the first thing that we're going to start with is finding the solution as to where it crosses the x-axis. Or, like we did this, maybe it doesn't cross the x-axis, right? So we're going to be able to justify, does it cross the x-axis? Where does it cross it? And what happens when it doesn't? So for example, if I gave you this quadratic equation, I'm going to be asking for you to find the answer -2 comma 0 and the answer 4 comma 0. And there's going to be a very easy way to find this answer. So let's get started with that. Hopefully you go to your OneNote and you can find 7.2 quadratic. Quadratic formula is going to allow us to find the answer to a quadratic and where it crosses the x-axis. The quadratic formula is x equals, because that's what we're finding, is where it crosses the x-axis. And it's the opposite of b, and we're going to learn what b is, because up here in every quadratic formula, there is a variable. A is always going to be in front of the x squared. B is always going to be with the x. And C is a constant, meaning a number. And the other thing that's extremely important about a quadratic formula is the entire pieces, ax squared, bx, and c, must all be on the same side. And if they're all on the same side and they're all set equal to 0, then you're ready to use the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula is the opposite of whatever b is, plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. A, B, and C, again, are all the variables in the equation. And so it is simply going to be a plug and chug. Um, do you need to memorize this? No, not for my class, especially right now. If you actually YouTube quadratic formula, you will see a million little songs or raps or chants. They're kind of funny that help you learn this. But you're going to be able to reference it. You can Google it. You'll see it's going to be part of our notes. So, what do I mean? All right, let me put this up. Hold on. I put this over here. X squared plus 6x plus 8. It's all set equal to 0. It's all on the same side. When we started Algebra 2, I used to give you this and I would ask you to get me the answer. And how would you do it? You would factor. You would find factors of 8, which are, remember, 1, 8, 2, and 4. Out of those factors, which give me 6. So you would get x plus 6, x plus 4, and x plus 2. Okay? And then if it was set equal to 0, we would do x plus 4 equals 0, and x plus 2 equals 0, and x equals -4, and x equals -2. So when I get that answer, it's -4 comma 0, -2 comma 0. But now what's happening is I have a quadratic. Everything, remember, this is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. It's in the standard form. Everything's on one side and it's set equal to 0. Well, guess what we have to do? We just have to label what A is, what B is, and what C is. And you got to watch signs. There's no number here. So when there's no number, it's actually represented as a 1. What's in front of the X is always your B. And what's C is your constant. And here it's -5. Please, please, please watch your signs. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to type in, if B is +3, I'm going to use the opposite of it, which is -3. I'm going to do square root. Now, instead of the opposite of B, I'm going to take what B is, but please remember, whether it's positive or negative, you are squaring that answer, which means right here in the quadratic formula, in the B squared is always going to be positive. -4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is -5. The entire thing's over 2 times 1. So now you've got to do your order of operations, which tells me plus or minus, and we'll talk about what that means. 9, -4 times 1 is -4. -4 times -5 actually ends up being +20 over 2. And now I get my equation to be -3 plus or minus the square root of 22. That is not a bad answer. There's only a couple things we must do here. We must see, can 29 break down, which it can't. If it did break down, then we would have to break it down, and that's how we would leave our answer if it was in exact form. If I want the rounded answer, because let's say we're going to graph, we need to know what the answer is. We're going to take -3 plus the square root of 29, put that in a calculator, and divide by 2. When I type in -3 plus, and then I'm going to hit the square root button, please remember the square root button is 2.3. And then I'm going to take 2.3 and divide by 2, and my answer is 1.19. Remember, guys, these are real life examples, so it's probably not going to end up being some number, some easy rounded number. The next thing, though, if you see here, this is your plus minus. That means there's going to be 2 answers. So the other answer is -3 minus the square root of 29. So you're going to do that. And whatever you get, you're going to divide by 2. So that becomes -8.35. And I'm going to take that and divide by 2. And my answer is -4.19. So please remember, when we're finding these answers, they are x's. So it's 1.19 comma 0 and -4.19 comma 0. Remember, we're finding, so in theory, if I had a graph here and this was 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, -4, -5, remember this would be 1.19, so it would be right after 1, and -4 would be right after -4. And just as a future, this had a positive value, I know my graph would go something like that. So I just want to make sense a little bit of what you're actually finding when we're doing this. Okay, I don't think we're gonna need to do too many. With me, you're gonna do a few on your own. So let's do one more together for sure. So the first thing is to check. It's in standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c, and it is equal to 0. So we want to make sure of that. Whereas, do I have any examples? I'm just checking. I don't have actually any examples. I will. Oh, there's one. This example 4 is not set equal to 0. So we would have to take x squared plus 2x. We would have to move this over to make it 2 and then set it equal to 0. And then you would start. And we'll do that one next. All right. So I only have a couple more minutes on this video. So what's A? 3. What's B in this case goes with whatever X is. That's a 1. See how I'm not taking the variables. And C, you got to watch, is that -1. I'm going to go back. I'm going to put it in the formula. The opposite of what B is, -1 plus minus square root of 1 squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A, which is going to be 6. Now, next step, -1 plus or minus, then I do whatever's here. Guys, if you have a calculator handy, type this all in, making sure whether this is positive or negative, you put it in parentheses or ignore the negative, because if you don't put a negative in parentheses, you will not get the right answer. So this is going to be 1. I'm going to do minus 4 times 3 times -1. That's going to give me 13 over 6. Then I'm going to take in a calculator, -1 plus the square root of 13. I'm going to have to find that answer before I divide by 6. And then I'm going to take -1 minus the square root of 13, get that answer, and divide it by 6. So go ahead and try both of those. All right, I got 2.6 up here. I divided by 6. I got 0.43. Then I got to this, I got -0.7. I divided by 6. I got -0.13. So remember, my answers are 0.43, comma 0, -0.13, comma 0. Decimals, real life answers. All right, let's skip and go to number 4, and we'll talk about this example because something is going to be different about this, which is good. So 1 is A. B, remember, is your +2. We move this over, so C is +2. We should be pretty good at this. The opposite of this is -2 plus minus square root. I'm going to take 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times C. And then I'm going to get 2 times 1. Okay. And now I'm going to get -2 plus or minus square root. And I'm going to get 4 minus 8, right? Because 2 squared is 4. 4 times 2 times 1 is 8. And I'm going to get -4 and then over 2. This here with a negative should be a huge red flag. We can't take the square root of a negative number, which is why we spent all last week doing what is the square root of a negative. We have to bring in I. And when we do that, we get -2 plus or minus I, the square root of 4 over 2. Okay, I cannot put I in a calculator, so I get -2 plus or minus. Now remember, the square root of 4 is 2, so I get 2I over 2. Now, if you're really catching on, 2, 2, and 2 can all be simplified to -1 plus or minus I over 1 would be my answer. What is unique about that is, let me get this, hold on. Go and type this on Desmos and show you x squared plus 2x plus 2 graphs this blue line. Well, if I'm asking you where it crosses the x-axis, it doesn't. So it depends how I ask the answer. If I just ask you for what would be the solutions, you could give me this answer. If I ask, is it going to cross the x-axis, your answer is no. So this is how we would leave it. You could technically leave it as -1 plus I, comma 0, and -1 minus I, comma 0. We'll practice more of these. I'll show videos on some of the answer keys, but when you have I, that's when it does not cross the x-axis. Okay, hopefully that was a good start.